Daniel Kostick presents Premiership Elections in Albertan History. This election took place on May 23, 1967, and was the 16th election in the province's history. Much like the past decade, Alberta was enjoying a high level of prosperity and well-being. Oil was booming and production was expanding, and 1966 would also see a record year in terms of agricultural growth.
Alberta experienced a generally buoyant year during 1967. On the farm front, grain yields were average, down somewhat from the record crop of 1966, but increases in livestock, poultry, and dairy product marketings assured a welcome increase in the 1967 farm cash income. The outlook for 1968 in the marketing of grain holds some uncertainty due to stiffer competition for world markets and in negotiations as to price. The development of oil and gas resources during the past year saw production value increases amounting to 10%. In the year ahead, there may be substantial adjustments in the world oil flow patterns as a result of the Middle East crisis. These adjustments will, in the long run, benefit Alberta's economy.
While the province was reaping the benefits of a strong economy and good government, the same could not be said for social credit. As the years went on and the Great Depression faded into a distant memory for many people, the need for such a party was beginning to be questioned. As social credit had emerged originally as a monetary theory to alleviate the effects of the 1930s, the theory had been reliably debunked and could never be implemented. While the party itself had moved away from the theory, having its origins tied to such an idea was proving to be a detriment. The only saving grace for the party was the reputation of Ernest Manning, who was still highly popular after being premier for 24 years. Since the 1930s, the Alberta government had maintained a flat rate of 5% on oil and gas production royalties. Royalties refer to the ownership of a portion of a resource or the revenue produced by said resource, which meant the government would inherit 5% of all revenue produced by the oil and gas sector. As time went on and the valuation of oil increased, there were calls from opposition members and the public to review the existing royalties. While the existing royalties were among the highest in Canada at the time, they were considered to be very low when compared to other countries. Social credit chose not to pursue increasing the royalties, which drew criticism from all sides. Another issue would hit the party, as a ghost from the past would resurface. Albert Boursier, former MLA for Lac Ste. Anne, would file papers to contest the nomination in Edmonton Jasper Place. The riding was currently represented by Social Credit MLA John Horan. Boursier had served as MLA from 1935 until 1952, but was ejected from the party caucus during the Douglasite Purge in 1949. He had lost re-election in 1952 by a long margin, but was still an active member of the party. Manning responded by removing Boursier's party membership, effectively removing him from the party for a second time. This prevented Boursier from contesting the nomination, but he would still run as an independent candidate. In 1965, amendments would be made to the Elections Act, expanding the rights of voting. This change would make 1967 the first provincial election in which Treaty Indians were eligible to vote. These changes marked the start of true universal voting rights for adults in Alberta. This election would also see a coinciding referendum on the adoption of daylight savings time. This is a practice of setting clocks forward 1 hour in spring and 1 hour back in fall with the idea of matching time to the hours of sunrise during the summer. While popular with urban voters looking to save effort and money on energy bills, it was highly unpopular with farmers in rural areas. Following losses in 1963 and an ensuing by-election, Dave Hunter resigned as leader of the Liberal Party and Michael Macagno, MLA for Lac La Biche, replaced him as interim leader. The following leadership race in 1966 saw 4 people run, but only 2 stood out. There was Adrian Barry, City of Calgary alderman, and Bob Russell, a realtor from St. Albert. While Barry would win out on a close third ballot, internal party divisions would cause his resignation before the year was out. Macagno would again replace him as leader and would be acclaimed as permanent leader in 1967. After the Progressive Conservatives were shut out of the legislature, Milt Harradence resigned as party leader, initiating a leadership race. 2 candidates would seek leadership. They would be Peter Lougheed, Calgary lawyer and former football player with the Edmonton Eskimos, and Duncan McKillop, also a Calgary lawyer and and former candidate for Calgary Queen's Park. Edson Town Councillor John Scott would also run, but withdrew on the day of voting. At the convention, Lougheed won 91% of delegate support and became the new party leader. With Lougheed's young age, the party successfully renewed itself as a fresh option for Albertans. In between elections, the fortunes of the NDP had improved. Not only did their continual decline end in 1963, but the party gained its first representation in the legislature with the election of Garth Turcott in a 1966 by-election in the Pincher Creek Crow's Nest riding. Neil Reimer would continue leading the party in this election. In contrast to the NDP, the coalition would see its fortunes decline. While the party would put up two candidates in this election, Francis Leo Frank Pop Gaynor had chosen to not run for re-election. This would leave the party without a standard-bearer in this election. During the campaign, Social Credit ran on its record of governance over the past 32 years of being in government. It made no major policy promises, but committed to looking into rising insurance rates for cars. Manning argued that Social Credit had the highest per capita spending while maintaining low tax rates. The opposition, however, focused their campaign on the shortcomings government. The NDP, in particular, devised a platform of higher oil royalties and carried over the platform of provincial ownership of power companies from the CCF days, including taking over public control of car insurance. On the other hand, the PCs realized that winning the election without a full slate of candidates was not a possibility, and focused all their efforts on winning Lougheed's seat in Calgary West. Lougheed also sought for a public leaders debate, but Manning continually denied the request. Manning would change his mind after Edmonton church leaders would organize one. Papers across the province lauded Lougheed's performance, and Maclean's magazine called him the only politician capable of an outside chance of challenging Manning. And here are the results. Ernest Manning won, winning 55 out of a possible 65 seats and 44.6% of the popular vote, down 5 seats and 10.2% since 1963. Next came Peter Lougheed, whose PCs won 6 seats and 26% of the popular vote, up 6 seats and 13.3% since 1963. Next came Michael McCagno, whose Liberals won 3 seats and 10.81% of the popular vote, up 1 seat and down 9% since 1963. Next came Neil Reimer, whose NDP won 0 seats and 15.98% of the popular vote, even in seats and up 6.53 since 1963. Finally came the Coalition Party, which won 0 seats and 0.73% of the popular vote, down 1 seat but up 0.19% since 1963. The resulting popular vote split be the worst result for Social Credit's 1940, where the party won 42.9%, and the worst ever showing of the Manning era. While the trend of dominating victories will continue, the result of this election would show that the era of Social Credit dominance in Alberta was entering its twilight years. This would be proven further as the election would also return the largest and most cohesive opposition since 1955. Lougheed would in turn give the PCs their best result since 1930, where the party also won 6 seats and 14.8% of the vote. The Liberals would again increase their seat count by 1, but the party was still mired in internal strife. Oppositely, the NDP would lose their only seat while increasing their vote share substantially. It would be the party's highest share of the vote since the CCF won 19.13% in 1948. With the loss of their only seat, the Coalition Party would fade into history as the final serious attempt at a union of Liberals and Conservatives. The plebiscite that was held saw a slim majority reject the implementation of daylight savings time. I'll see you in the next one.